Welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, the podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I'm Cliffy D, and you can find me on Twitter/X at Cliffy D.
And I'm Tim Capper. You can also find me on Twitter, but at Repact. That's REPPACT. And this episode of the podcast is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where if you use the promo code ALSFlightDeck10 at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order. So if you head over to sportbuffshop.com, use the code, save percent, support local, and get some great merch.
And the Alouettes Flightdeck is all over social media and the World Wide Web. Make sure you check out our archive over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca, where you will find all 7+ seasons of the Alouettes Flightdeck podcast. Make sure you give us a follow on Twitter/X at AlouettesFLDeck. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/AlouettesFlightDeckPod. Instagram, you can find us at Alouettes Flightdeck, as well as Threads, Alouettes Flightdeck. And by all means, folks, be sure to check out, subscribe to our YouTube page over at youtube.com/AlouettesFlightDeck, where we have been, archiving the Flight Deck live shows, and also, as of last Saturday, we'll be broadcasting live from our YouTube page, the Flight Deck live show. And of course, last but certainly not least, make sure you head over to our merch store at teespring.com/stores/AlsFlightDeck, and make sure you support the podcast by checking out the amazing merch that's there now.
Quick teaser for next week's show, Cliff. We have something when it comes to the with our store and our merchandise and a particular cartoon bird shirt. We have an idea that we want to pass by you guys, and again, so stay tuned for next episode and learn all the info on what we're planning to do. So stay tuned. And also, by the way, speaking of YouTube too, Cliff, if you want to be notified of when we go live, because we are able to schedule the shows, and you will know, make sure you hit that bell button when you go and subscribe. Or if you've already subscribed, go and hit the bell button anyways. That way you'll get a notification on your phone that we are live when we do any of our Flight Deck live episodes. So can't forget that, buddy. And you know what? Considering what we're able to talk about this week and what we talked about on Flight Deck Live, you needed to have the bell turned on to see the notification, because, wow. The game in Ottawa this week, where the Alouettes had won, I think it was 7 straight, they've now won 8 straight. I don't think we would have thought, spoiler alert, I don't think we would have thought that, considering the way that the first half ended, is the way that the second half in the game was going to finish, did we?
It was truly a tale of two halves, a tale of two teams, a tale of two Caleb Evans. However you want to frame it.
That's actually good. Yeah.
My goodness. I mean, folks, one of the great things about the Canadian Football League, and I know it sounds cliched at times, but truly no lead is safe. I mean, anything can happen, especially in the last 3 minutes of a Canadian Football League game. Truly anything can happen. And the Montreal Alouettes proved that to be true yet again with an absolutely incredible comeback from behind victory over the Ottawa Redblacks by a score of 25-24. I mean, this game had just about everything, Tim. I mean, when you sit and think about it, I mean, just the highs, the lows, the holy crap moments. I mean, there was a lot of everything in this game.
Oh yeah, there really was, because it's, we obviously we made the trip to Ottawa because we love supporting the team and seeing everybody, and yeah, it's the rate we were going when we were there for the first half. We were like, why the hell are we here? Because
it was a dog's breakfast. There is no question about it. I mean, Ottawa came out. They were inspired. They wanted to play. They wanted to show up and show out for our nation, for their hometown fans, and the Alouettes. I mean, it's funny. We had noticed too that the Alouettes were wearing their alternate red jerseys.
Yeah,
and
that was the first thing. Yeah.
But let's not forget too, the Alouettes have not won wearing an alternative jersey in a long, long time. They debuted these jerseys on Canada Day and unfortunately lost to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So right away we're thinking, oh crap. I mean, is this going to be a sign of things to come? And that after that first half of football, we were thinking like, this is not good. This is not good at all.
No, the team had been outscored 34-6 in 90 minutes of wearing those red jerseys, and we're like, oh no, because we've seen it before, Cliff, where a team will break out something, everybody, great, they look great, they get a great reception, but the team just plays like garbage in them, kind of how we do when we wear white at home. But hey, luckily there was another 30 minutes, and
and let me tell you, I'm going to say this right now. I'm putting it out there 100%. There is no team in the Canadian Football League that does halftime adjustments better than the Montreal Alouettes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if this year has proven nothing else, the Alouettes, when it comes to making halftime adjustments, no matter how the chips are down, how poorly they play in the first half, they get it figured out. And they come out like gangbusters, and especially in the fourth quarter is when they really seem to come alive. But as far as we saw a lot of this in 2019 as well. The team would look uninspired and just didn't seem like they knew what they were doing. They're trying to figure things out, and then flip the switch, and all of a sudden they're this dominant, incredible football team that just runs everybody over. We're seeing that again in 2023. We're seeing it again with this Alouettes team, and for my money, like literally there's no other team that does what the Alouettes does when it comes to like the first half versus the second half. It's really something to see.
Yeah, no, I know. As everybody knows, I mean, Cody Fajardo was still listed as the third string quarterback for this game, but was not going to start. And we had a feeling it wasn't going to come in anyways. He was just there as the emergency backup quarterback. But again, Caleb Evans got a second straight start as a Montreal Alouettes since he's been on the Alouettes roster. Outscoring the Red Blacks in the second half, Cliff, 22-7. And scoring the last one with less than 30 seconds left, beating the Red Blacks 25-24 to improve their record to 6-3, which is their best start at the midway point since 2012, where they were also 6-3. Again, as you said, everything that could happen in this game did. And this is why this game is just so fun to talk about.
Oh, absolutely incredible! And I got to give credit to the Ottawa Red Blacks too. They were scrappy. They fought to the very end too. I mean, they roared out to a 17-3 lead at the half, and at one point they're up 24-10. I mean, they kept on coming. They wanted this victory just as bad and did everything in their power to try and secure the win. But I mean, Montreal, they just hung on. And even when things were looking so grim, I mean, you're down 24-10 and then you kick a 50-yard field goal. I think, okay, this team has given up. There's nothing. Like, what's going to happen? But Caleb Evans, man, like he came alive. And he put this team on his back and willed them to victory. That there's no other way, no two ways about it. Like that's exactly what he did. And I gotta say something to Alouettes Nation. I was reading the comments on social media throughout the game, and I'm guilty of making some of these comments too. Like we were saying, get Evans out of there. He just doesn't have it tonight. This is not his game. I don't know if it's the nerves of playing his former team in his former house. I don't know what it was exactly. He didn't seem to have it. And I saw lots and lots of commentary, like just dragging this guy through the mud. But give him credit. Like he figured it out. He fought through it, and he got the win. He made it happen. He got the win. And, I think seriously, Alouettes Nation, I love y'all, but if you haven't already, you got to make a huge apology to Caleb Evans. I mean, it's truly, this is the Canadian Football League. It's not how you start. It truly is how you finish. The last 3 minutes, all that jazz, all those cliches. Caleb Evans did what he had to do. He fought through the adversity and came out smelling like a rose. I mean, he did the thing, man. I mean, and props to him. I'm eating my words too. Like I said, we were saying, please put Davis Alexander in. Maybe he'll figure it out. But credit to this coaching staff. They stuck behind they stood by their man. They said, no, he's going to figure it out. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. And he did. He did an absolutely fantastic job. And, it helps that he had all of his receivers working, in tandem. William Stanback also too, helping, with a couple of nice runs as well. I mean, a lot of the things fell into place for Caleb Evans to do what he did, and it really did come down to leadership. And he definitely showed that, this could be his team too. He's a winner. He proved it the week before against Saskatchewan. And, they can make any number of excuses as to why Saskatchewan lost that game as badly as they did. But Caleb Evans fought back. He fought hard, and he persevered. And look what happened. Now he's 2-0 as the starting quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes. You got to take your hat off to him. He did the thing. He did the thing, and he did it extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team, Cliff, that did not lead the entire game until 14 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
Well, the Alouettes are good at that. I mean, you think about 2009 Grey Cup, they didn't take the lead until the zeros were on the clock. And then
I think
a game like this,
most recently wasn't it the Winnipeg game in Montreal, the Miracle on Mount Royal?
Yeah. I think that would, that one too. I think there was like 8 seconds left on the clock. When they kicked the go-ahead point after touchdown. Yeah. But this team, man, by hook or by crook, they find ways to win, and it really is something else. And my goodness, like we were looking at each other dumbfounded afterward after the game, like that just happened. That just freaking happened.
And Alouettes Nation, who was there, by the way, hey, props to them who showed up and stayed, because it was, again, as you said, I even tweeted it out too. No lead is safe. So, by the way, this is how the game went before we get into the real nitty gritty and into all the stats and what everybody did. Caleb Evans, Cliff, in the first half was 9 of 16 for 98 yards and 2 picks. Those 2 picks, by the way, as we know now, that turned into 14 points. Oof. That's what gave Ottawa that 17-3 lead at halftime. What is that, by the way? Oh, yeah, that they're down by 14 points. The second half, he was 15 of 20 for 235, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yep, but that first half, though, like 2 interceptions, a forced fumble. Like I said, he just didn't look like nothing was working for him. Like it's just. He looked lost out there. Like he had a couple of nice passes, but by and large, he just and I hate to say it, but man, I saw a lot of Cody Fajardo in him, and I'm not saying it necessarily in a positive way. That first half, like you doing that rollout that Cody does, and then the happy feet. Like, I mean, a lot of the things that can be a little bit difficult to defend when it comes to Cody Fajardo, we saw a lot of that in Caleb Evans. And it didn't work for Caleb any better than what it would have for Cody Fajardo.
Yeah, and by the way, I need to correct myself. One of the interceptions led to a touchdown. That fumble you mentioned led to the other one. So that other interception was near the end of the half. So I just wanted to make the correction.
Yeah, still points off turnovers. I mean, that'll kill any team, or it should kill any team. But Ottawa too was guilty of that. Was it Tyrell Pigrome? Coughed up a fumble, and recovered by Tyrell Richards for his first fumble recovery. That was always nice. Yeah. That too led to that led to points as well. I mean, that's the thing. If you turn over the ball, like that was the theme, I guess, last Saturday was, if you turn over the ball, it's going to cost you points. And we saw it, and for both teams, it's incredible. Like just if for no other reason, you got to protect the ball. You got to make smart plays, and you just got to ensure that the other team doesn't take the ball away from you because they'll make you pay. Whether it was Ottawa, whether it was Montreal, points off turnovers should and often does you in.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. Caleb Evans, to give him the entire stats, was 24, 36, 333 yards, Cliff, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Caleb actually led the team in rushing yards with 49. He also had, obviously, that winning touchdown with 14 seconds left in the fourth. William Stanback had sort of an off game. 10 attempts for 31 yards. Did you notice anything out of the ordinary with Stanback, or was it just the Ottawa defense came to play?
Ottawa defense definitely came to play. I've heard a lot about their run defense being very tough as well, and I think William Stanback can definitely attest to that. Once again, I think before this game, I think the Red Blacks had won 2 straight at home. So, and this was after going almost 2 years, I think, without a home win. So there was, I think, a little bit of pressure to keep that going. So obviously this defense was extra charged up and wanting to help protect the house, if you will. So yeah, I definitely see them loading up and trying. They also too just shows the respect they would have for a William Stanback because they know if he had a chance he was going to break one off. He did end up with a reception that he turned into 36 yards, which is
working so well. Yeah, since I think it's been two years where the first year it was just so at it, and then he worked on it, and you've noticed consistently over the last couple of years when it comes to William Stanback getting a screen pass out the backfield, he makes it well worth the pass itself. We rarely see anything less than 10 yards when he does something like that because we know the boy can rumble. So. I agree with you. But he's a double threat. That's the main thing. He's a double threat.
Exactly. He can hurt you with his legs and with his hands, too, it seems.
That's true. Leading receiver for the Montreal Alouettes, Cliff, was Le Big Mac. 9 receptions on 13 targets for 116 yards. He had a longest of 23 yards. But still, the big one, including not 1, but 2 touchdowns. Tyler Snead, second on reception yards with 98. He was perfect for the night, Cliff. He almost did the 777s, but he was 7 for 7 when it came to targets and receptions. 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the touchdown. What would we call it? Was it it wasn't a gift touchdown because it was just a perfect play. It was the play that followed what could have been Caleb Evans' 3rd interception, second time throwing in a double coverage. For what reason, I do not know. But because of instant replay and automatically checking any turnovers with the command center, it was deemed incomplete. And on the next play, Tyler Snead, touchdown, and that started the Alouettes off on taking this game.
Yeah, and it's so funny that touchdown was very reminiscent of Ben Cahoon in the 2009 Grey Cup.
I know
the little dive, everything. Like again, I'm calling this kid Cahoon 3.0, and he really is living up to it. I mean, even to the simple fact that he's wearing number 85, like 1 less from 86. I mean, which was Ben's number, obviously.
Who's Cahoon 2.0?
Bo Bowling.
Oh yes, Bo Bowling. Yes,
we talked about yes. So I got to give it's 3.0 now. So I mean, like Tyler Snead. I mean, and so many other people now are starting to notice comparisons between he and Cahoon, and I mean it's uncanny. I mean, just a tough as nails little guy, just making those catches in the dirty areas, getting those yards, scoring touchdowns like what Ben used to do. I mean, the similarities are incredible. I mean, like just what this guy lacks in size, he makes up for in heart and just sheer ability.
Oh no, I agree.
This guy, what a find! What a find this guy is.
And just to give him his chance, I mean, as I said, we've seen him ball out since training camp, and sure enough, he's doing what he needs to do. And by the way, speaking of wide receivers that are doing what they need to do, and ones that really haven't been standing out this year, the other one that set up the game-winning touchdown was the 51-yard reception by Herdy Mayala. I was like, where was the defense? You talk about getting frustrated with the rollout from Caleb Evans. This time it worked perfectly because he rolled out he rolled out to the left, and by God's grace, there was Mayala wide open
He was like
down the sideline.
he was open all night like a 7-Eleven. My God. I mean, just like, where was the coverage? Like, talk about blown assignments. Like, Ottawa, like the secondary just, had been playing so well against Evans, like, causing him to turn the ball over. Again, that turnover in the end zone that wasn't by Sherrod Baltimore. I mean, like, this team, you would have think, okay, they had Evans figured out, but you would have also figured, okay, they've got everybody covered. But Mayala was all by himself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure even he was thinking, oh, really? Oh, nobody? Oh, okay. And he was off. And
it was shades of the Austin Mack catch a few weeks ago where he was wide open, didn't score, but he had a long reception. So
exactly. I mean, it's incredible. And that too was a third down play, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And like Evans just throws up the prayer, and here comes Mayala catching it, and he's literally on an island, and just, as you said, set the stage for the Alouettes to score the go-ahead touchdown in absolutely spectacular fashion. I mean, you talk about the drama, and again, our nation, to their credit, was making noise. They were doing everything. They were willing their team to victory, and just, you could tell Caleb in his old house, he wanted it just that much more, just a little bit more than what Ottawa did. And again, just speaks to the character, speaks to him coming through in the clutch, and wow, just absolutely incredible. Like, everybody was sitting there, like, their jaws agape, like, just like Alouettes fans were shocked because holy crap, we just made the comeback with like less than 30 seconds to go. Ottawa fans, they thought this game was in the bag, and they just watched, the Alouettes, or they just watched the Red Blacks snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been there, our nation. We know what it's like watching your team come oh so close and just having victory just slip through the fingers. Unfortunately, it does happen, and we feel your pain. We really do. Like, this was not something to gloat about. I mean, it's just talk about just the sheer will to win for the Alouettes. I think that's really what it was over everything else.
Yeah.
And Ottawa just, I wish I could explain what happened, like why things broke down the way they did. But I mean, credit to both teams. It was way too close for my liking. I mean, this was the kind of game, like, you are literally on the edge of your seat, because could they pull it off? Could the Alouettes really truly come back from a 14-point deficit and win this game in a game that a lot of people felt the Alouettes should have been able to walk all over the Red Blacks, even though the Lions were saying no, Montreal's slightly favored, but this really just goes to show, like, this truly is a game where you need all 60 minutes, 57 plus 3, all the cliches. They actually applied, and they actually came true this past Saturday at TD Place.
Exactly. Just to round it out, William Stanback, we're talking about it before, with a great with a great reception out of the backfield. He had 36 yards and 2 receptions. We also had James Tuck, who had 2 receptions for 14 yards. And finally, Courtney Davis had 2 receptions for 9, and Tyson Philpott had 1 for 9 himself. He's been quiet as of late, but everybody else seems to be stepping up. One thing I want to ask you about, Cliff, just on the Ottawa side of the ball, real quickly, is, and I'm curious to know your thoughts. Last week, obviously, the Alouettes did it on the ground rather than through the air. This week, it was obviously just the opposite. But Ottawa themselves, they themselves almost had 190 yards of rushing offense. Does that concern you? And I know we'll be talking about a little bit later about the game itself, but does that concern you at all going forward?
it's always a concern. I mean, we keep talking about how elite this defense is for the Alouettes, and they pretty well got run over. I mean, Dustin Crum, my goodness, this guy was literally running all over the place, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what you've come to expect from this guy. Uh, but there's a lot of times too where the Alouettes got caught flat-footed, and guys like Devontae Williams, Jackson Bennett were literally able to run all over them.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most glaring example though was Tyrell Pigram with a rushing touchdown, lining up 3rd and 1. He just needed the 1 yard, and he's like, "Nah, screw that. I'm going to the house." And he sure did.
Breaking tackles too. That to me, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, that and if anything though, like you talk about quarterbacks rushing for a touchdown, Dustin Crum, that touchdown, my God, that nobody was able to stop him, and that's his bread and butter. That's what made him famous, is that you know his educated feet. I mean, and when he rushed in for that touchdown, that was kind of like a lot of people, I'm sure, pretty much thought, okay, well, that's the game right there.
Mm-hmm.
But because again, Evans just wasn't clicking the way it took him a while to really wake up and start making plays happen. But I mean, Ottawa is so dangerous on the ground. It's scary. Like I said, this team really, truly, you cannot sleep on them. Like, regardless of what their record is, regardless of everything that's going on with them, they've been decimated with injuries as well. They've had their trials by fire, if you will. But I mean, this is a team that can be a threat on game day without question. I mean, they definitely came to play. They could have just as easily got the W as well. I mean, it really felt like with this game, this was like schoolyard football, sandlot football, whatever you want to call it. Like, pretty much back and forth, and whoever had the ball last was likely going to win the game.
Yeah. You look at it. You look at a lot of the other stats here. I mean, that basically time of possession was equal. It was pretty fitting, but the Alouettes still led by quite a bit in when it came to yards overall. But I mean, it's again, finally in the second half, the defense stepped in. Again, Sean Lemon and the boys did their due diligence and were able to control them. Again, they held Ottawa, dude. They held Ottawa to 7 points in the second half. So, think of if take away the turnovers in the first half. Can you imagine what type of game this could have been?
My goodness, it's man. That's just it. I think that's why probably a lot of Alouettes fans were so pissed off during the first half, because like, you're better than this. We know you're better than this, and maybe that's why there was the frustration and the calling for Caleb Evans' head, because we know you're better than this, and start playing up to your potential. And again, it's a simple matter of, okay, halftime, you saw what happened. It was not pretty. This is what you got to do. And they went out and did it. They adjusted. They started playing to their opponents. They started, playing that elite football that we have come to start expecting from this team over the past few weeks. And they figured it out. And it's great. Like it's not good for the heart, mind you. My goodness, but it makes for fun football. It makes for enjoyable, entertaining football, and that's all we really want. Is we want to be entertained. And this Alouettes team, it's crazy to think, but I mean, this team is just so much fun to watch. And once they get their act together, once they figure it out, man, there's just no stopping them. There really isn't.
Yeah. Real quickly, Dustin Crum for the Red Blacks was 14 and 19 for 130 yards and an interception. That by the way, that was the interception at the end of the game, which almost was brought to the house.
Reggie Stubblefield. I mean, this guy, my goodness, we've been talking about him because he's given us so much to talk about as far as making plays happen. And you know what? He should have taken that to the house. He really should have. That would have been like the little salt in the wound. But okay, fine. You got it, and kind of got tripped up. Like, okay, it happens. I'm not gonna ask for push-ups this time, but essentially helped seal the win for the Alouettes. So I gotta give props to Reggie for that. I mean, he's just outstanding. Like, this guy has been playing some incredible football and so happy. Once again, Tim, can you believe this guy was a last day of training camp cut?
I know.
A final cut.
And look what he's doing now. That's the
Exactly.
thing.
So
They've been able to gel as much and make the modifications that they needed to. So
that's really what that's really what it comes down to is, and again, folks, we keep talking about this. If you're a football player and you get cut in training camp, just stay ready. Maybe it's just not your time just yet, but you stay ready, you stay by the phone. Your number gets called and you're ready to go, and you prove that you're ready to go. Reggie Stubblefield is proof positive that when your number gets called and you're ready to go, good things are going to happen.
Yeah,
and look at him now. Good luck trying to get this guy off the field. Like, well, a lot of these injuries that have happened on the defense, like these guys are eventually going to come back. But I mean, at that point, like, how do you tell Reggie Stubblefield, no, you're going to hit the bench because so and so is back? Like, no, I think they're going to stay on the bench.
He's made a name for himself. That's the thing. So
exactly.
By the way, 3 sacks again for the Alouettes this week. Another one for Sean Lemon. He's getting ever so close to that century mark. Another one was by Mustafa Johnson. And the reason why I'm leaving this to last, because this was the nastiest sack I have seen in a long time. Tyrese Beverett put the bleeping hurt on Dustin Crum with this sack. It's like he was shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, just put the wood to him. My goodness. I mean, man. Once again, these are the plays you have to make. These are the guys you expect to step up in this Noah Thorpe defense and make noise. And sure enough, I mean, Tyrese Beverett, man, just one of those guys that is just so much fun to watch. And you know that on game day, he's doing everything possible to make the opposing quarterback's life a living hell. And he does it so nicely. He does it, I won't say to perfection, but he does a damn good job of it.
Yeah. With the win, the Alouettes are, as I mentioned earlier, are 6-3. They've now won 4 straight. And
I'm sure it's no coincidence that ever since the Alouettes signed Sean Lemon, that they're 4-0. I mean,
dude, I'm not going to complain, man.
It's incredible. I mean, again, and I'm not saying he's the sole reason why they're 4-0, but his contributions to this team,
modifications, with Ento being moved to the other side, and yeah, it's been everything. It's been everything what this team has done. So
yeah, and credit to this coaching staff. They get the despite for example, like the huge win against Saskatchewan is good for the morale. It's good, but it's all like, okay, you celebrate the win. 24 hours later, you're back to work. And I think that's the mindset you've got to have, and that's what keeps these guys grounded and makes them realize, okay, yeah, you won last week. That was last week. That's in the past now. Let's focus on today and what's to come. And that's what this coaching staff has been able to do with this organization, and it's so much fun to watch. It is so great to see. Like, Alouettes Nation has to be just vibing on how incredible this is. It's not pretty, the wins, but my God, winning is fun. There's no question about that.
Yeah, that's true. And obviously we got a big game coming up this week, Cliff, and we felt what better way to talk about the matchup versus the Blue Bombers than to bring in somebody who knows exactly what he's talking about, didn't we?
100%. We're so excited to have Darrin Bauming back from Bonfire Sports out in Winnipeg. He's been doing the thing as far as coverage for the Blue Bombers. Lots of great insight, lots of just helping to understand the perspective from things in Winnipeg, because we got to see this Blue Bombers team on Canada Day, and it's not going to be the same team that the Alouettes are going to be facing this coming Thursday. So had a lot to talk to with Darrin about. So without further ado, let's bring in Darrin and let's talk about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Montreal Alouettes. Joining us this week to preview Thursday's game between the Montreal Alouettes and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is a Winnipeg institution. He's the creator of Bonfire Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the flight deck once again, Mr. Darrin Bauming. Darrin, welcome back to the flight deck.
Hey, that's quite an intro. I appreciate that, guys. I was born and raised Winnipegger. I've never heard myself referred to as an institution, but I'll take it.
Well, listen, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, like the work you've been doing in Winnipeg itself, not just for the Bombers, but for the Jets and the Rifles. I mean, you listen. As far as I'm concerned, you're a Winnipeg institution.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean,
not quite on the level of 7-Eleven Slurpees, mind you, but still pretty good, pretty good.
There's still Winnie the Pooh, there's still Chris Jericho, and there's still Slurpees. That's for sure.
It would be pretty hard to top Chris Jericho. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, he is big. He is big. International.
That's great. I love that. Darren's just below Slurpee. Oh man!
All right, so we've got the second time that these two teams are going to be taking on each other. First game was Canada Day, which was a weather-delayed affair that saw the Bombers hand the Alouettes their first loss of the season. As far as the game goes, I know like a lot of the starters didn't play for Winnipeg, but also too Montreal had a couple of injuries as well. What are your initial thoughts going into this second tilt between the Bombers and the Alouettes? Like, what are you looking to see? And what are you looking at initially, and what are you expecting to see on Thursday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really intriguing game. I'm really interested and intrigued by it because I think both of these teams are much different than they were on July 1st. That win helped Winnipeg, kind of begin a streak of some pretty strong football outside of, an overtime loss to Dustin Crum and the Ottawa Red Blacks. Now, that was the Crum back and a pretty impressive comeback from that team where I think Winnipeg just fell asleep in the second half. But that win over Montreal on Canada Day that you talk about was a big one for Winnipeg because they were coming off a 30-6 loss at home, of all places, to the BC Lions. And that was the first Western Division team to beat Winnipeg at IG Field in 5 seasons. So the way that they were able to rebound was big. For Montreal, I remember at that time, you mentioned it was their first loss of the season. They entered 2-0, and then they went on to lose their next 2 games. And at that point, people were kind of wondering, okay, is Montreal for real? Are they going to be able to put up, a serious contention in the East Division? And, since being at 2-2, I think Montreal has played exceptionally well and very exceptionally well without Cody Fajardo over the last couple weeks. So to get Fajardo back and to have the defense the way Montreal has been playing lately, of course, Winnipeg will have Zach Collaros back. So 2 QB1s making their return from injury. But I really look at the defenses and how Winnipeg's defense matches up against Cody Fajardo and a real balanced Alouettes offense, and the way that Zach Collaros and Brady Oliveira, and we know how dangerous their receiving core is, how that matches up with a defensive unit in Montreal, guys. I've been incredibly impressed with as of late. Maybe not their best game, this past week. In Saskatchewan, or pardon me,
in Ottawa.
Yeah, in Ottawa. Thank you. Maybe not their most impressive game there defensively, but they did enough, especially late, to keep Ottawa at bay and help a young quarterback in Caleb Evans capture the victory.
Talk about Zach Collaros. I mean, he's missed the past couple of games because of either head or neck injury, I guess, depending on how the injury report stands. But obviously with Collaros' history with concussions and such, would you say that having him back in the lineup, would that say that he is 100% healthy, or is it just a matter of keeping the momentum going as far as Winnipeg being one of the top teams in this league?
Yeah. Well, like when you're talking about head injuries or neck injuries, which are effectively the same thing, it's the spinal cord, it's the brainstem, it's all of that, right? And of course, there can be injuries in the neck area that are beyond that, injuries of the head that are beyond, to the brain or to the spinal cord. But when you're talking about those things, you always kind of have to be cautious, and you have to be aware that, something that looks kind of inconspicuous can be serious, and something that looks more serious could be a pretty minor thing. All things said, here in Winnipeg, it is said to be a minor neck injury that kept Collaros out last week. I think if the backup quarterback situation in Winnipeg was different, then maybe Collaros would have been, looked to return for that next game. And I don't think that would have been out of the question. Drew Brown played really well against Edmonton, obviously in mounting the 22-point comeback after Collaros went down to injury. And he played pretty well against a good defense in Calgary last week as well, and helped Winnipeg edge the Stamps to, in a 1-point victory. But for Collaros, I do not think that the head injury history has anything to do with this injury. In talking to Collaros this week, he said, that hit hurt a lot. And that's generally not how somebody would talk about a collision with the head or a concussion or something along those lines. I think he probably just got bent by Tony Ely. I don't know if you guys want to get into, Collaros' comments from the other day where he said the CFL has never really done much to protect quarterbacks. And then, of course, the hit itself, not penalized and, not fined for or anything like that for a quarterback that had the ball out of his hands and was on his belly. But in the end, I think Zach Collaros, especially from what I've seen in practice, I'm confident that he is as close to 100% as a player could be. Any player, just with the rigors of a season, as close to 100% as a player could be at the midway point of a 21-week CFL season.
I find it interesting too. By the way, it's two types of similar situations where both of our quarterbacks are coming back with an upper body injury, and with the Alouettes and Cody Fajardo being out for the past 2 weeks for having being out specifically not for an injury with his throwing the shoulder on his throwing arm, but it was just the opposite, and how him and obviously Coach Moss have been very coy about. What Cody's been able to do and stuff like that. Him being off for the last 2 weeks. And what I find is funny, Darrin, is that him coming in this week and being able to go back to being listed as a starter on the depth chart. But Cody only had, it's a short week for the Alouettes. One practice. That's it. And the thing that Cody's been talking about is that it's not necessarily worrying about getting hit. It's about after, I guess basically being tackled and hitting the ground where it may potentially hurt the most. So I kind of find it interesting how both these quarterbacks are going to be, starting against each other for the first time in a couple of weeks, and very type of similar things where, it seems that the head coaches have been overly cautious. And as you just said, it's a 21-week season, but Yeah, no, and even with the comments from the quarterbacks, at least the coaches, when it comes to the quarterbacks, they know when to keep them out, even if they don't feel that the CFL is backing them up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And hey, let's be real about it. We know the importance of the position in football as a whole, and especially in the Canadian Football League. Like, it's been a number of years now in a row where we have seen teams lose their number one quarterback and their season really kind of goes off the rails a little bit. We've also seen a couple seasons as of late where we've seen 20-plus quarterbacks start games in a 9-team league. And that's just too many. Like, this season, I think we're already at 23 different starting quarterbacks. And we're at the halfway point of the season. It's too many. So, the conversation and the debate and everything that goes around protecting quarterbacks, I think, is a valid one, but it's also a big one, right? It's a big conversation to have. As far as how Mike O'Shea and how Jason Moss handle their quarterbacks, they're always going to do everything they can to ensure, number one, that their quarterback is healthy, number two, that they are prepared, and number three, that maybe the outside world, the public, anybody outside of those, locker room and office facilities don't really know exactly what's going on. Mike O'Shea has always played cloak and dagger, always kept his cards very close to the vest. Jason Moss, I'm starting to see him and even other coaches in the league kind of pick up on Mike O'Shea's approach to that And, I think of Jason Moss's comments a couple weeks ago saying, well, if I was a betting man, I would think Cody Fajardo would play, and he didn't, right?
Yeah.
So, these coaches are worried about their teams. They're worried about, having everybody available. And, when it comes to a short week and only getting a practice or two in, I think it's the mental approach, the mental practice, those mental reps that are as important as anything for a quarterback. Do they need the reps on the field? I don't necessarily think so. I think as long as they're able to mentally process their preparation, and then, of course, they're going to go out and throw the ball around outside of practice hours, right? Guys are going to want to get those extra catches in. Guys are going to want to get those extra throws in, those extra routes run, and that sort of thing. So, in no way, shape, or form do I think these elite pro athletes are, going to miss a day or two of practice and have that, get in the way of them being fully ready to play when the lights are on.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of when the lights come on, how happy are Winnipeggers that Kenny Lawler is back in the lineup? He missed the first few games because of reasons, but how to have one of the premier running receivers back in the lineup? How happy are Winnipeggers to see 89 back in the lineup?
Yeah, immigration issues for those that aren't privy to the details of it, but was convicted of drinking and driving 2 years ago. That took about a year to work its way through the courts, and he pled guilty this past spring. And everything was in order for Kenny Lawler to return and play, and signed a free agent deal to return to Winnipeg once again. And then about a month, I would say, around a month before the season started, and with training camp already underway, they realized there was an issue. And that was that, the paperwork wasn't filed properly, and that Kenny Lawler, out of no, fault of his own in this instance, the instance of the paperwork, he was unable to work legally in Canada as an American resident who, has a conviction of a crime in a foreign country. So Lawler was not allowed to be in the facility, not allowed to be in regular contact with his coaches, his bosses, his, work colleagues, that sort of thing. No doubt he kept casual contact with his teammates and that sort of thing, but was not allowed to, effectively work while he missed a good stretch of time at the beginning of the season. But yeah, to answer your question, no doubt Bombers fans are incredibly excited to see Kenny Lawler back in the lineup and catching passes again. The Blue Bombers have not been shy to throw him right into the fire and throw the ball to him early and often. And we're already seeing why he has been regarded number one, number two, maybe to Geno Lewis, as the top receivers consistently over the last number of years in the CFL. He already has a 200-yard game this season. He's an incredibly confident young man and still, sets goals for himself that are incredibly lofty. But I don't blame him. He's on one of the best teams in the league, with a two-time MOP, reigning MOP, throwing them the football, and an offense that is balanced with a strong run game and other weapons around him, namely Nick Dembski, Dalton Schoen, and there's others as well that have had big seasons so far. So, it's been a heck of a lot of fun watching Kenny Lawler. I personally think now that Brian Burnham is retired, Lawler probably has the stickiest hands in the CFL. You can throw a ball kind of anywhere near him. His catch radius is incredible. And if he's able to get a couple fingers on it, he's probably going to bring it in. It's really something to watch.
It's funny you mentioned Brian Burnham and Geno Lewis because I think it was the second time we interviewed Geno on the podcast. He asked us who we thought the best receivers were in the CFL, and my first answer was, not sounding biased, but him. And then the next ones were Kenny Lawler and Brian Burnham. So it's incredible how you can't hide talent. There's no question about that. And Kenny Lawler is, for my money, still one of the premier receivers in this league.
Yeah, he does it with his hands. He's also just very, very good running routes. He finds ways to get open against the best cover players, cover defenders in the CFL. And, when you mention Geno Lewis and Brian Burnham, it's funny, Cliff, that those two in particular have been my favorite players to watch. I grew up playing receiver. I grew up idolizing those guys in the NFL and in the CFL. And, obviously being able to watch Milt Stegall up close and personal here in Winnipeg when I was a younger kid, were all very inspirational things. But now as I, cover this league, for a living, and it's my job, I still get a ton of satisfaction watching those guys that you can see put in the work and put that work and match it with their, pair it with their talent. And that's why you get guys like Geno Lewis and you get guys like Brian Burnham that are so good and been doing it for a long period of time. They're just outstanding athletes and just, again, a heck of a lot of fun to watch.
Without question. Let's take a look at the defense here. Demario Houston, where did this guy come from? Because this guy plays like his hair is on fire and has just been simply outstanding this season.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a riverboat gambler. He's a guy that will take risks and takes opportunities to steal the football away. He's a very athletic, very sharp young man that is really sinking his teeth into his second full-time season in the CFL. For those that, haven't followed the Blue Bombers particularly closely, and I know that that's pretty much everybody outside of Winnipeg, Demario Houston actually secured the starting boundary corner spot with the Blue Bombers last season when Winston Rose was injured. Again, this season, Winston Rose suffered an injury in training camp, and it was Demario Houston being the first player to get the tap on the shoulder to start at that top cover corner spot. He is a heck of an athlete. He's had an outstanding start to the season, and it goes beyond his league-leading 7 interceptions. It is fumble recoveries, forced fumbles. He is responsible for being part of 10 takeaways this year. And if you look at that metric against other defenders in the CFL, there's few, if any, that are in even the same stratosphere as Demario Houston is right now.
Yeah, I just get the impression for the couple of Bomber games that I have watched to completion this year, it feels like he's everywhere. And it's almost to the point where you just don't want to even try this guy. Like, I don't see any opposing quarterback willfully trying to throw in his direction because they have to know this guy's going to snag it one way or another.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I believe fully that the reason Demario Houston is around the football so often is because of the player that lines up right next to him at the boundary halfback spot. Dietrich Nichols has been the best kept secret in the CFL for the last 2 years. And I mean, bar none. There is nobody in the league that is, that quarterbacks shy away from more than the player that wears number 1 in a Winnipeg Blue Bombers uniform. He is, I think, top 5 player in the CFL, quarterbacks included. Dietrich Nichols just doesn't have his name mentioned on broadcasts because the ball just doesn't come his way. So you do see Evan Holm, the halfback on the other side. You'll, see Winston Rose and Demario Houston. The Bombers have had a couple different players at the dime or the strong side linebacker spot this year. That is where opposing teams go with the football because Dietrich Nichols is just kind of a no-fly zone. Darrelle Revis of the New York Jets, years gone by, it was Revis Island. People started calling Dietrich Nichols the same thing as, Dietrich Island. I like to call him the human tarpaulin because he covers everything. Dietrich Nichols has just been outstanding. And I think that's a reason why Demario Houston has had the opportunity to lead the league in interceptions this year because he has, more balls than not thrown his way. And you just don't see Dietrich Nichols getting targeted often, if ever.
It's like they say, if the left one don't get you, the right one will.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. When it comes to Winnipeg, again, I think a lot of people, like a lot of non-Winnipeg people, were waiting for this team to start to falter. Even though despite years of, wondering if this team was ever going to get to a Grey Cup and win it, and then after becoming back-to-back champions and almost becoming three-peat champions, it feels like now people are back on hating on the Blue Bombers because they're so good. how do they maintain this momentum as far as being one of the, as I said, like one of the top tier teams in this league, along with like the Toronto Argonauts and the BC Lions?
Yeah, how do they keep the momentum? I mean, the reason they have been as good as they have been is for one reason. It's because they approach every game the exact same way. They look to get to 1-0 every single week. And it doesn't matter if they're playing a winless team or they're playing one of the top teams in the league. It doesn't matter if they're facing a veteran quarterback or a young quarterback or a vaunted defense or a youthful team. Injuries on their side of the equation or injuries on their opponent's side. Winnipeg is just incredibly focused, and that's obviously something instilled by head coach Mike O'Shea. As far as the greater league perspective on Winnipeg, of course, everybody hates the team that wins and wins and wins, right? And every team, I think, in the CFL, every franchise kind of goes through those dry years and then more fruitful years, right? The Anthony Calvillo years in Montreal. Everybody here in Winnipeg hated those times because the Blue Bombers were struggling, right? The Calgary Stampeders maybe most recently, and their championship pedigree type years and dominance of being, 12, 13, 14 win teams and making it to the Grey Cup year after year raises the ire of, the fan bases in other markets. Here in Winnipeg, well, they went, the Blue Bombers went 29 years without a Grey Cup championship. That was a huge stretch of time from 1988 to 2019. And now it seems like the work that they have put in with general manager Kyle Walters, head coach Mike O'Shea, president and CEO Wade Miller, who is number 3 in the all-time special teams tackles list in CFL history. All these guys played in the league, are Canadian, and know what it takes to win in the CFL. And when that trio, they call them the Canadian Mafia, mostly because Dave Dickinson gave them that nickname, a very infamous moment where the TSN microphones picked up the head coach of the Stampeders saying that, the blanking Canadian Mafia being those 3 guys. There's T-shirts made up here in Winnipeg, and it's kind of, part of the lore now. But when Wade Miller, Kyle Walters, and Mike O'Shea took over in 2014 in earnest and rebuilt the team from bottom up, the last 3 or 4 years is the fruits of that labor. And it's the culmination of that vision that they put out. And there were tough times in there as well, where, 2015, 2016, the Drew Willie era prior to him joining the Montreal Alouettes, of course, where they thought Mike O'Shea would maybe lose his job here in Winnipeg. They remained steadfast and continued to work on instilling a culture. And now you have those veteran players teaching the younger players. As those veteran players move on, the young players move into those leadership roles. And it's kind of a hands-off operation in the locker room. Mike O'Shea is not in there talking to the guys. So, in telling you guys this, it kind of gives you a picture of why the success has been there. Will it ever will it go away eventually? It always does. Nothing lasts forever. But as long as Willie Jefferson is playing to the level he is, as long as Adam Bighill is the leader he is on and off the field, as long as Zach Collaros is playing at an MOP level, as long as a lot of those role players and all-star caliber players that play their role so consistently well, as long as all of that's happening, and they've been safe, relatively speaking, from the injury bug to, missing too many of those big players for long stretches of time, they're going to continue to win because of that culture and of that day-to-day, week-to-week approach of just focusing on getting to 1-0 every single game. It's been impressive to watch.
Again, it's, to use another wrestling term, like Ric Flair says, to be the man, you have to beat the man. And I mean, the Bombers have proven it over the past couple of seasons. They essentially are the man. They are the team to beat in the Canadian Football League.
Yep. And, when the Toronto Argonauts lifted the 109th Grey Cup last November in Regina, it was because they were the better team on that day. And we've seen, obviously, the belief that the Toronto Argonauts have in themselves. And obviously they've added some pieces in free agency, and now Chad Kelly, of course, being their number one quarterback. But the way they were able to hang in that game, and, some have argued the Blue Bombers beat themselves. But the way Toronto was able to hang in there and then to win a championship against such a consistent, dominant team in the Blue Bombers, I think that's a big reason why there is that belief and there is that consistent level of performance from the Toronto Argonauts so far to start 2023, because they did beat the man, and they've always kind of, they've got that feather in their hat. They've got that ring to brag about, those bragging rights, until we see who's lifting the mug in late November this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
wow.
let's go and let's look at the game for this week. We've already played once this year. In your opinion, if you're looking at these two teams versus, now than what they were on Canada Day, how different are these two teams going up against each other this week?
Yeah, I think both teams are more battle tested. I think both teams, have learned different ways to win this season. To me, I think these are two very, very well coached teams, and that goes beyond their head coach. Great coordinators on each side of the football, and including special teams for both of these football clubs. So I think when you have two very good teams, two talented teams, it's really going to come down to who has the better game plan. That's kind of the strategy and the preparation part of it. Then on game day, who is going to bring that physicality level? So often, I believe, and I've really thought this for a long time, the pundits, the fans, the media types often overlook the true nature of professional gridiron football, and that is, if you can smack your opponent in the mouth and they're not able to smack you back at the same rate, either with consistency or with fervency, then you're going to win more football games than you're going to lose. And I think if you're able to bring that physical intimidation and that level of physical play pretty much every time the ball is snapped, you're going to have a real market advantage in the football game. As far as where the game is being played, it's important to lay out that this game will be played in Winnipeg. They had 29,000 plus fans at their last home game against the BC Lions 3 weeks ago. They have 30,000 plus expected to be on hand on Thursday night. And then the Banjo Bowl, which is the back-to-back of the Labor Day Classic with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, that game is sold out, as it is every year. So there will be 33,500 fans in attendance for that game. So with 30,000 on Thursday night, when Fajardo is on the field, no doubt Jason Moss and the entire offensive staff are preparing for that. It's going to be loud. It's going to be difficult. And no question, Fajardo is going to have to be very good at the nonverbal communication, because when that crowd gets rocking at IG Field, it is something to contend with. That's a huge advantage the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have. Is home field. It really is like a place almost like no other in the CFL. It is in the stadium. I'll just leave it at this. It's a stadium that is on Chancellor Matheson Boulevard here in Winnipeg at the University of Manitoba. And Chancellor Matheson was the first chancellor of the university. I call IG Field the Madhouse on Matheson. It is a real sight to behold, and I don't even think television does it justice, because the visuals and the sound just aren't conveyed through TV the way it is being in that stadium. It literally shakes.
No, I agree with you. I think, well, I know, Cliff, you've been there. I mean, we always say, guys, it's that when you're going to go see any type of sporting event, if you want to get the real gist of what it's like, you have to be there in person. You really can't, as you said, you really can't see what it is like on television at all.
That's right.
Yeah, can confirm. I was actually there for the 2016 home opener. It was Bombers versus Alouettes, and just when maybe it's because he's a hometown boy, but when Andrew Harris came out, I think it was his first game as a Bomber. The pop was phenomenal. Like I looked around like, did Jesus Christ walk out or something? Like, this is incredible. Like you're absolutely right. The noise level was just sensational. So Yeah, I definitely see that being a factor tomorrow as well. So I have to believe that Coach Moss is definitely getting his troops ready for that because, yeah, one thing about Winnipeggers is they will bring the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And not air
CFL's
horns too. Like you guys will make
no,
real noise.
no, not too many air horns, not too many. Well, I would almost say no air horns, and not too many cowbells, as is popular in many Western CFL markets. It says the CFL's loudest fans right on, the end walls of the stadium, and the drum line is something that kind of gives that college football feel to the atmosphere, and it's something that I've noticed. People that watch the Blue Bombers on TV and have never been at a Blue Bombers game really notice. It brings an almost like a warming, welcoming element to the raucous crowd of roughly 30,000 every week. It's a pretty cool place to take in a game. But Thursday's going to be fun, man. Montreal's defense, if they're able to flex their muscle like I know that they can, and I think all the fans out there listening know that they can, I think this is going to be a close football game. I really do.
Yeah, well, I was about to say one of the few differences between these two teams from the last time they met on Canada Day is the acquisition of Sean Lemon. I actually don't know, and this is why I'm going to ask you: how has he been versus Collaros and the Bombers over his career? Because obviously, most of them know it as being a Western guy when he was there with Stamps and whatnot.
Yeah.
How has Sean Lemon been versus the Stampeders in his versus the Bombers in his career?
Yeah, nothing really jumps out to me, I'll be honest. I asked Zach Collaros about Sean Lemon this week and, complimented him. And you said, he's been playing at a high level for a long time. But then he also ended it by saying, I don't want to compliment him too much, with a smile on his face, right? And, just a little bit of playfulness there from the Blue Bombers quarterback. But, yeah, they're going to be aware of Sean Lemon. Through the years, I remember maybe Charleston Hughes being more of a menace to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers than Sean Lemon. But yeah, no doubt. I mean, Sean Lemon has sacked every quarterback that's played in this league for nearly 2 decades. So, it's been pretty cool to see the Lemonator reemerge once again and silence all of his doubters with the way he's been playing and getting to the quarterback this season.
Mm-hmm. Makes you wonder why the Bombers didn't keep him. Like, he was on the practice roster back in 2011. It makes you wonder what happened, why he just didn't stick around.
Yeah, I don't know the details of that, but that was his first stop in the CFL, and never dressed for a game. I think he was a training camp cut. I could be mistaken, but similar to Kevin Glenn being a paper member at least of every CFL team. Sean Lemon, I think there's just one team remaining for him that he has not been a member of at some point, right?
Correct. That would be Hamilton, and we've already told the Tiger Cats that no, you can't have him. Not now. Not now.
Not yet.
All right. Well, listen, I'm excited for this game Thursday. At IG Field, it's like I said, the atmosphere is going to be electric. There's no question about that. You're talking about two teams that are about as evenly matched as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be a 20-3 game for either team. I definitely think this will be, as you said, a much more tightly contested affair. Really, truly, it's so weird. Like, the Thursday night football is something that we used to see a lot in Montreal. There's only one Thursday game the Alouettes are going to play this year, and it's actually this coming game. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing what both of these teams can do, and I'm definitely looking forward to a really entertaining battle.
Well, if I can spin the dynamic around, I would love to ask you guys, before I do my pregame show on Bonfire Sports on Thursday morning, what is the key in your minds of Montreal finding success and snagging a road win in a really tough place to play?
Tim, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I want to see where Cody is at, because obviously 2 weeks off. He passed for over 200 yards the last time that these two teams played, but obviously nothing came of it. No touchdowns. For For me, I want to see what Cody's going to do, especially in the first quarter. It's funny, the Alouettes in this game also are going to have the what we like to call the three-headed monster at running back. It didn't do much when it came, the last time that these two teams played, but William Stanback seems to be doing quite well. We saw what Walter Fletcher's been able to do. I think these guys just need to get going. It's again, for me, it's really looking at the offense and seeing what Cody can do. But for me, also, specifically, especially the last time that these two teams played, it's curious to see how Kabian Ento does on defense. Him switching sides by Coach Thorpe was one of the best things that he could have done for this player. He's been playing very well. Seems to be very high on his play, and he seems to have. Since that switch out and bit just being decimated when he was playing versus Toronto, he's done really well. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen because again, last time the two teams played 17-3. A lot of people say that really Winnipeg did dominate even though with the 2-hour delay. But I don't see this being that type of game itself. I think like you guys are going to be close, but for me again going back. I think it's going to be all about the offense and seeing how Cody does to start the game. Cliff?
Well, let's be real, guys. Calgary at Toronto, Hamilton at BC, Ottawa at Edmonton, the other 3 games in the CFL Week 12. Montreal at Winnipeg, it's the game of the week to kick things off on Thursday. It's going to be great.
100%. And I think back to last year, it was around this time last year where the Alouettes handed the Blue Bombers their first loss of the season. Again, nobody in the world. In fact, I even bet Gary Stern, the owner of the Alouettes, I said, if the Alouettes somehow come away with a win, I will donate to the Montreal Alouettes Foundation. And sure enough, even though Mark Leggio in overtime bricked the field goal that could have at least tied the game, or would have won the game, I think, for them. And yeah, Montreal actually got the win at IG Field, which was something that nobody had predicted. So I think for Montreal, like they got to know that, okay, we can win in this place. We can win in this barn. And I think if they go in with that mindset, especially with the defense, I know Winnipeg's going to be raring to go. I think the real chess match is going to be Buck Pierce versus Noel Thorpe as far as offense versus defense, between like two coaches that really have their schemes down, two coaches that really relish the position. I think that's going to be the real battle. Like everybody talks about O'Shea versus Moss, and as they should. But you alluded to it earlier with the coordinators, like Buck Pierce. As far as I'm concerned, one of the better offensive minds in the CFL versus Noel Thorpe, whose defense has always drawn rave reviews. To me, that's going to be the real matchup, if you will, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, couldn't agree more. J.R. Reed, Tyrese Beverette, the fronts that the Montreal Alouettes bring, Marc-Antoine Dequoy on the back end and the dual responsibilities he'll have against the Blue Bombers' run game and pass game. Those are the guys I'm really focused on. And I even asked a lot of Blue Bombers players this week about Tyrese Beverette and Reed and of course Lemon. They speak incredibly highly of those players and the defense as a whole. I'm with you. Buck Pierce, Buck Pierce's offense versus Noel Thorpe's defense is probably the one phase of the game I'm going to be looking most into as well. No, it's going to make for a very entertaining game. That much. I'm not one for making guarantees, but I guarantee that this will be an entertaining battle. I just don't see it being a blowout for either team. I think this will be a real knockdown, drag-out kind of affair, and it'll be just absolutely fun to watch. And a perfect way to kick off this coming week of Canadian football. No question. Always good games between these two teams in Winnipeg. Always. Exactly. So, yeah, we're so spoiled. That's good. We are. All right, Darrin, we've taken up more than enough of your time. We definitely appreciate you joining us. Tell everybody about Bonfire Sports if they haven't already checked you out, which if you haven't, shame on you. But let our listeners know what Bonfire is all about and how they can find you on social media. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing Bonfire Sports for the last 2.5 years. We're in our third season of CFL coverage and Blue Bombers coverage.
do pregame, postgame, and midweek shows. We do all of those live. Chris Walby, the legend, on the field and off the field, calling 10 Grey Cups for the CBC. Joins me every week for Blue Bombers pregame coverage. Our postgame show is an absolute blast. It's game day after dark, and then looking forward to getting into hockey this year. So if anybody wants to check out the Winnipeg sports scene, and really we do cover the entirety of the CFL on Bonfire midweek on Wednesday nights. You can find everything on bonfiresports.ca. You can find us pretty much everywhere. If you search for Bonfire Sports. So invite everybody to grab a seat around the bonfire, crack a cold beverage, and join the conversation, because that's what it's all about.
You heard it, folks. That's it right there. Darrin, once again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Flight Deck. Appreciate your insight as always. And once again, we are looking forward to an absolutely fantastic football game this coming Thursday.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. Really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been my pleasure, and keep up the great work. Love what you guys are doing on the Flight Deck.
Thanks again for Darrin for coming on the show, Cliff, because I will admit, I've watched him before when they're doing their show on YouTube and stuff like that. The guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to the Blue Bombers, and couldn't have a better guy to come on and give us a preview of the Alouettes versus Bombers this Thursday.
Yeah, definitely appreciate Darrin's insight. He's definitely dialed in. He follows this league fervently, and definitely someone who can definitely shed light as to what's going on in the 204, as they say. So thanks again, Darrin, for joining us. We definitely appreciate you, and you're always welcome back here anytime. So hey, maybe this coming November, we could be looking at a Grey Cup preview, as crazy as it sounds, but Bombers Alouettes, if they make it to the Grey Cup, I could definitely see having Darrin back on to talk about possibly the rubber match for this series.
Oh, you never know. You never know.
Never know.
And before I know we talked about quite a bit, obviously, in the interview itself, but anything out of the ordinary, or anything that really stuck out from what he mentioned during our talk?
Honestly, nothing really, nothing out of the ordinary. Just, again, there's no question that Winnipeg is going to be a tough game. I mean, but you've seen how the Bombers have played over the past couple of weeks. I mean, they can go from like beating the crap out of a team to fighting for their lives. And I won't necessarily call it inconsistent, but I mean, like the way they've been playing. I mean, I struggle to use the term beatable. Mm-hmm. But because technically every team is beatable, I mean, when you think about it. But I mean, Winnipeg's going to come into this game looking to keep things going. They are one of the top tier teams in this league without question. And I'll go so far as to say is Montreal should be in that tier as well. I mean, we talked about the 3 tiers of the Canadian Football League and how it's basically Winnipeg, Toronto, and BC when Vernon Adams is playing. Like that's the top tier. And Montreal is just knocking on the door, as far as I'm concerned. Like they are that team that could easily be a top tier team. A couple of bounces here and there, and this they could be one of the elite teams in this league. And some would even argue that they probably are right now. It's just nobody's either wanting to acknowledge them as such, or maybe even truly appreciate what they've done so far. And a victory against the Blue Bombers this coming Thursday would definitely help the argument that, yeah, this is a top tier team. They should be in that conversation. But until that happens, yeah, Montreal is kind of right on the cusp. Like as I said, they're like a glass ceiling. Like you can see that top level. It's just how do you break through that glass ceiling and join that exclusive club? And if Montreal can find a way to win against the Bombers, especially at IG Field, which they did last year, and it was quite the exciting game. If Montreal could do that again, come away with a W, yeah, you would have almost no choice but to acknowledge this team as a top tier team, because it's easy to say, well, who have the Alouettes beaten? Like they've beaten some good teams, they've beaten some not so good teams, But a victory against the Blue Bombers, against one of those quote unquote top tier teams, would definitely go a long way in changing a lot of people's minds, and they'd have no choice but to acknowledge that, yeah, this Alouettes team is for real, and they are definitely in that upper echelon.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, you're talking about people not seeing is not believing. Whatever the term is, I look at the line specifically for this week, and I looked at it, and I told you about it. And yesterday when we were watching and listening to the guys over the Turf District, at that time the line for this game was 8.5 in favor for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Well, you and I go to start our interview today with Darrin, and it's up to 9. I understand everything's based off of the line, off off this and that and the other. And I was thinking that it was that the line itself was set like that because of the not knowing about what's going to happen with Cody Fajardo, and more than likely that Winnipeg is going to have Zach Collaros under center. I would have thought this number would have changed. I honestly think this game alone, when it comes to the bettors, this to me is one of the biggest slaps in the face of all year. I just feel that it's so much disrespect. But you know what? The team has been disrespected all season long by everybody, no matter what we've done. So you know what? Go ahead and make us a 9-point underdog. Go ahead and make us a 10-point underdog. Because you know what? We're going to come, we're going to slap you in the face, and it's very possible that we're going to walk away with a victory.
Without question. I mean, this team has proven, if nothing else, as I said, no team in the CFL makes better halftime adjustments. So even if it looks pretty grim at halftime, and once again, I fully expect Alouettes Nation to crap all over the decisions being made and everything like that, because they just can't help themselves. And it's unfortunate. And I'm just going to sit there like, okay, well, yeah, if they play terrible football, they play terrible football. But they figure it out. And the only thing you can hope for is, as long as it's a close game, and even if they're down at the half within a touchdown or maybe even 2 touchdowns like they were against Ottawa, the Alouettes will get it figured out. And that's kind of the mindset there that you almost have to take, is that this team is not out. I mean, if they're down, they're down. They may be down, but they're not out. They will find a way to come back. They will get it figured out. That they'll flip that switch, as we keep talking about. And all of a sudden, this will be a very competitive game. And I'm not guaranteeing a win by any stretch. Don't get me wrong, but Montreal is. I can't help but laugh at this 9-point spread as well. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm almost at the point. It's like, I'll take your free money. I think the Alouettes can cover. I think the Alouettes can make this a very tightly contested affair. And don't be surprised, win or lose. The Alouettes are definitely going to make this a competitive game. I think these two teams are a great matchup. We talked about the chess game, I think, between Noel Thorpe's defense and Buck Pierce's offense is going to make for a very entertaining game, without question. And both quarterbacks coming back from injury, they've got something to prove as well to their fan base. They want to show that they're back and ready to go for the second half of the season. I mean, okay. You want to look at this a 9-point spread as a slap in the face? Okay, well, the Alouettes will take that. I'm pretty sure they will. But that's the thing. You got to keep this team down. You got to do everything you can. You got to put them away, and that's something that over the past 4 games, teams have simply not been able to do to the Alouettes. Is that they might get ahead, but they can't stay ahead. They let the Alouettes hang around and come back, or the Alouettes set the tone, and there's just no beating them.
Mm-hmm. No,
there's so many different ways that the Alouettes have been able to win and maintain this 4-game winning streak. And truthfully, I see them going into IG Field and definitely playing some outstanding football. Again, I'm not guaranteeing a win, but I am guaranteeing that this will be a tightly contested affair and just a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Stay tuned for the next episode of Flight Deck Live. You will be seeing it scheduled on. It will be available on Twitter and on YouTube. Make sure you, again, hit that bell button so you'll see when we're going to schedule it to go live. I know there were a couple of transactions that we wanted to comment on real quickly before we let you guys go. And we've been talking about all year, Cliff, about how injuries have played a factor for the Alouettes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now being that the transaction page is working again, dun dun dun.
Better late than never.
Montreal wide receiver Jake Hardy, Montreal wide receiver Courtney Davis have been placed on the 6-game injured list through September 24th. They now actually have the dates listed here. Philippe Gagnon has also been extended on the 6-game to September 24th. So we're now down again 2 wide receivers. And again, we are hit with the injury bug. So whatever part, I think Courtney, I think it was a foot or an ankle, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we saw Jake took a hit this past week, if I'm not mistaken. I had to go back and check and see what was listed specifically in the transaction in the practice report. But still, dude, it's a leg. It's a leg for Jake Hardy. It's just frustrating, isn't it?
It is, but as this team has shown, the resiliency and very much the next man up mentality couldn't be more true. And this is where you get to see the depth. You get to see the guys that maybe have been a little bit quiet in training camp, or even the guys that sit out in training camp, but because of the sheer numbers game, they ended up relegated to the practice roster or even outright released. Once again, best example of that, Reggie Stubblefield. Mm-hmm. Had a fantastic camp. We expected a lot out of him. We expected him to make the cut. He didn't, but injuries started happening, and Reggie came back, and now good luck getting this guy off the field, because he's just been playing outstanding football. And that's, once again, a great example of being ready when your number is called. And I would say that to anybody that's on the practice roster right now. And again, the Alouettes are going to have to start adding people to the practice roster, because these injuries are starting to pile up, and it's concerning. It's definitely something that most teams would worry about. But now you're getting to see the kind of depth. You're getting to see the moves that Danny Machocha made in the offseason and throughout camp, and even all the way up into today. Even, I mean, he is being tested. He is being tested as far as being able to find the talent that's out there, and has done a pretty good job. I mean, look at the Tyler Sneeds, the Austin Macks, the Courtney Davises before he got hurt. Like, these are guys that were given the opportunity and made the most of it when the more established players spent their time on the injury list. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to see, like, now that Tyson Philpott's back, and he starts developing that rhythm again with Cody Fajardo, and he's going to be going off in a big way. I can feel it, and that's what this team does, is just reload. Yeah, guys go down to injury, but who's next? Who's going to step up now? Who is going to come be a part of this team, and who's going to be the next potential superstar? Because now he's finally getting his chance to play and is going to do great things. Like that. That's always the question when it comes to injuries. Is you're concerned because a lot of these names that are on the injury list are some pretty big names and some very talented players. But now it's just a matter of, let's see where the depth is. Let's see what needs to be done. And Danny Machocha, if he has to reload, if he has to go out and find more talent, he will. And his track record's been pretty good so far when it comes to finding guys that you may have not have heard of, and you don't know what they were doing last year, but all of a sudden they get on this team, they put on the jersey, and wow, there's some talent right here. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the fun. And you know what? That's why I just don't even worry. Like, as soon as you mention, okay, we released so-and-so, or we signed so-and-so, I'm like, okay, cool. He's earned, as far as I'm concerned, Machocha's earned the benefit of the doubt as far as, okay, who is this? Doesn't matter. He'll come on here and he'll do well, just because he seems to be doing a very good job of finding the right players, the right people to fit into the system, who can come in and be a productive member of this organization. So there's no doubt in my mind as far as scouting, as far as being able to restock the war chest, as far as being able to find those diamonds in the rough. Mm-hmm. it's not a concern at all. So all we can do at this point is just, as guys go on the injury list, hope they heal up, hope they come back better and stronger than ever, and just keep on and KB on.
Yeah, exactly. We appreciate every single one of you for joining us this week for the Alouettes Flightdeck podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about the game versus Winnipeg and what's to come next for the Montreal Alouettes. So, Cliff, I will see you on Flight Deck Live, and we hope to see you guys there too. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.